Overtraining, is it the coach's fault or is it your fault? We're going to take some real close look at it to kind of see who's at fault, where this comes from, some of the warning signs, things you need to look for. So make sure you like and subscribe. And let's get ready for SOA Podcast, episode 46.
Strength of America podcast.
All right, welcome back. And yes, this is 46. I know the last episode I was off on my number, so I made sure I checked it out today. And that's why I gave the funny look. I was trying to figure it out. Give me a hard time. All right, episode 46 on overtraining. This has been a lot. We talk a lot about this in the past. I know with coaches, athletes, parents are talking more and more about it, which is great. We've got to take a look at what the signs are of overtraining. And really some of the dangers of overtraining and what goes on. However, I want to take a closer look at it, find out, is this really something because the coach is going on, they're just working these kids too hard, or are the kids prepared and they know what they should be doing ahead of time? So, Bobby, what are some of the warning signs of overtraining? What do we see kids going into? I mean, we know irritability. Wouldn't be anything thinking of you today with your podcast attitude.
Yeah, I'm overtrained all the time.
Yeah, that's the case. Just when we get together. Irritability, some of those things going on. They're not sleeping well. We also know that we're starting to see that where they were progressing, that they're starting to move backwards a little bit too. So those are one of the other things you can see as well. But we know a big part of that is when we are overtrained, we're in that position going on, we know injuries happen a lot more as well. So that's something we want to, of course, a major concern for us is when they're training, we should be doing things to get them better, not causing injuries and problems. So what do you think? Where do you fall on the side? Is it coaches or kids or both? Combination? What do we need to look at?
There's a combination, of course. I think a lot of the times, though, we got to start to think, and I've had a hard time because sometimes some years you have some kids that are good athletes, great work ethic, and they're just going to be a little more prepared. They're going to be in better shape and everything's like that. So you can kind of bring it to them a little bit more. And then maybe you realize that you come in this next year and you try to bring that same pace and they don't meet that same pace. So now you have to pull back the reins because those kids just aren't as good of athletes and aren't as prepared for it. They're not in as good a shape. It's sad to say that you can't keep that intensity with everybody just because people aren't doing what they need to make sure that they're prepared for what they're about to get into. Or in the mindset of getting better, always trying to do a little bit more, keep consistent with things around the year to make sure they keep moving in the right direction and taking the right steps. But, also I've been learning as a coach and different things like that, and as seeing different coaches and different situations that, you got to meet the kids where they're at. Does it suck at times because now you can't quite get to where you think you want to be or where they need to be? Yeah, it sucks that you can't push them in that same intensity. But at the same time, you have a responsibility to take care of the kids. So you got to realize that, sometimes you got to tone back because they're just not where they need to be. So you got to get them to that point before you can even move forward.
Yeah, and it can be overtraining. You can think of just, we tend to think of real big things and things happening, but overtraining can simply mean, you start a track season, or if we started the basketball season, you start having shin splints, and you went from a sport that you weren't doing as much running, and now you're doing a lot of back and forth stop and go, and that is the conditioning part. So the coach needs to help and understand as well. Well, I've got to take time, find out what sports these kids were involved in, were they doing any sports before, and then slowly build that up. But hopefully you're finding even before the season starts, good coach really setting things up. We'll send things ahead of time saying, hey, you're coming out for the sport. Here's what's going on. We're going to start in 3 weeks. Make sure the next 3 weeks you're doing this, this, and this daily or every other day. Put some things into it. So when we hit the ground running on the first day of practice, it amazes me still all these years with football players that their first week of their two-a-days or their practice conditioning week, that you should have kids show up that aren't in shape going into it. And then the coaches try and, it's part of the football. It's what we do. We basically destroy them, put them in so they get tough. Well, how about we show up in shape on the first day of that, and we can work skills development right from the bat. How much better is that team going to be than the other teams if they spent 4 weeks of skills development rather than 4 weeks of conditioning like everybody else is? You're already a month ahead of the other teams. But that comes with a program, understanding summer conditioning, what you need to do ahead of time. But for me, is also understanding as a coach, we've got to educate the kids and the parents. So for me, we have things going through, and we talked about this before on our summer conditioning. You have the camps out there, and I know my camps are outdoors, most of those. So we've got here in Phoenix, some of my camps are 110, 112, 115 we've hit at camp time. And even though when there's shade of the building at that point, it's still pretty hot out there. But our kids, when I've got 30 of them at a time going through conditioning, and I've only got 2 of them that are having troubles out there, that's not an overtraining part on my end that we're working them too hard, because I've got 1 or 2 that need to lie down after we finish warm-ups. It goes back to the kids and the importance of understanding the big picture, that they're going to work hard in training. We typically don't have kids that come out that aren't going to work hard. So that's not the problem. But the big part is understanding on some of the things that they can do to help prevent overtraining as kids. What should they be doing ahead of time?
Just making sure they're taking care of a lot of things that we talked about in past podcasts, watching nutrition, getting some of those things right, making sure they're getting their meals, they're prepared. Hydration is in order, okay? And obviously with that, we got to have hydration with the nutrition there, okay? That way we stay better hydrated, our bodies are moving and working a little bit better, but we also got to make sure we're sleeping well. Is our sleep schedule regular? Are we sleeping enough? And are we moving around and staying active enough? Generally, those things, if you got those ducks in a row, it's tough to get overtrained, especially if you're doing the proper training. If it's an overtraining because a strength coach is just doing something just absolutely insane, and then sometimes you need those crazy things once in a while just to kind of test the waters and see what you got. But if it's something you're doing day in, day out, week in, week out, stuff like that, then it's going to lead to overtraining. But if you have proper training as you're going through, especially with your sports, let's say you're a year-round volleyball player, for instance. Let's say if I'm training year-round to combat some of those imbalances, then I may not run into as many overtraining issues as I would if I just played the sport itself. So
yeah, well, that's an important part going into it. And we've always taught our kids, told them all the time, you guys that are 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, you got the most efficient body you're going to have in your whole life. If you just fuel it properly and get the sleep you need to, overtraining is not going to be an issue for you guys if you get those part of it into it to get it set up. I'm still with our kids right now. Yesterday we had conditioning out there, and we had some new ones, but some of them have been with us for a couple of months now and doing a great job. But they don't always get consistent on that with their food. So, for example, I find out how many of you had your 3 meals already with protein, and here it was 3:30 in the afternoon getting ready to start. They just finished school at 3, and only about half of them had their hands up. Most of them, they're up pretty good, but it also helps me understand how I have to adjust my workout. So, yeah, I do have a plan, and here's what I want to do, and this is what I want to get done. And sometimes I do have to back it up a little because the kids aren't ready. But I don't let that be a continued excuse where they go, they're not ready, so I'll go ahead and go easier, we'll adjust this. That's not happening. There's a point that, we get to have Bob fun, which means, okay, you're not paying attention, you're not doing your part of it. We're going to do this kind of a workout to help you understand that you're not learning by listening. You're going to learn with that 2x4 that we talk about. Just that sudden, oh man, I'm having a tough time with this workout, I can't do it. I'm not making them throw up. But the idea is they just have a tough time getting through it. And they're seeing other kids out there that are doing great. And then we ask again, what have you eaten? How many meals have you done? Your protein levels, your water, how much sleep? And then they'll figure it out, and then they come back in and they're fine. So you have to find different ways as a coach to get them to understand that. Just as parents, you try and figure out as well. They've heard the same thing from parents most of the time on what they need to eat and how often, but they don't always do it. That's where our fuel chart, and I appreciate those of you guys have been messaging me about that, and getting that out and giving it to your athletes, because when we do our camps, that's a must. And those kids will fill it out right on day one. I want to see where they're at. And some of them will do it weekly, depending on how they're learning this process. Or I see if kids are starting to slip and having troubles, boy, let's get that filled out again, because there's nothing like writing it out, putting that information, then they get those red circles that say, okay, well, you didn't have enough water. How much did you have here? Here's how much protein you had at this. Here's where your calorie count was. And then it hits them. Man, no wonder I'm having trouble out there. So working hard isn't a problem for them, but they've got to be prepared. And a lot of the times, I'll tell you, the overtraining, and not just because I'm a coach, but I'm talking about all different coaches. It doesn't matter if I'm volleyball coach or basketball or anything else, football. If that athlete is prepared, they can handle about anything you throw at them. And, you've got to be in reason and stuff. We're not talking nut stuff. But
Yeah.
you've really got to take care of that. And you, as an athlete, we teach them, you guys are responsible. It's not coaches or anything else. We'll put that together. We talk about how to prepare. And we'll tell them, well, you can all make a sandwich. And unless you're allergic to peanut butter, make that peanut butter sandwich, even half of one, put it in a baggie, throw it in your backpack. And then while you're changing right after school, that's the time you eat that. Because then you still have time, 20 minutes after you've changed, you've done that, you're ready to go before practice does, you start easier with warm-ups. You're not going to have a digestive problem with eating half of a peanut butter sandwich. But for that to give you a boost, instead of relying what you did at 12:30 for lunch, and now it's 3:30, but I'm practicing until 5:30, and you expect the lunch to cover you through that 5 hours, and then the hard training for an hour and a half, 2 hours, there's only such a level you're going to be able to push at. So that's where you need to do your job as an athlete to step up and do that. Find the thing that you can eat. And if not, we're all here for you. You know where to go to ask questions on what to have, but you got to be prepared. That's on you.
No, that's great. I think, and at the end of the day, I feel like most of the kids know what they should be doing, and they can say, did you eat well today? No, they know. Nobody has to be a crazy nutritionist to know that. Maybe an apple's better than a candy bar. A water's better than a soda. So those simple things that kids do know, I just think it's great. Just kind of like you say, is you're just asking them on a daily basis, or if things aren't going well, hey, how many of you got your meals in today? What's your protein look like? Did you get protein in every meal? Just simple questions, and kind of bringing the topic of discussion up more often, or holding them accountable is what makes the difference. They know that sleep is good. They know that they need to eat. If they don't eat anything, they know how that feels, that lack of energy and all that. And they know the same thing with water. So I think it's just bringing it up more often and making sure they're conscious of it. That way they can create a habit with it.
But it gets frustrating as a coach. You want the best for them. They talk about wanting the best. And I can tell you, one of the things that we do, and yes, I'll do those workouts, but that workout thing, when it's time, they're just not getting it, I push them to that point where they're harder. And again, you're still watching, you're not doing anything crazy with them. But the idea of the intensity, and then they start seeing where if we're all just doing bench and curls and basic stuff, they can adapt and get through that. But we start involving some of our plyometric work and power stuff, and we shorten our rest time in between things. And then now they're starting to have a harder time to keep through it. That's what I mean, where they're going to find out that, wow, Johnny over there, he's doing great. He's not resting. I'm sucking wind after I get done. I'm the last one off the floor when we get done with our plyo push-up work to come back over and do pull-down work. Whatever it might be, that's the thing. But as a coach, the other thing that's helped me a lot through the years is we also do testing. We do pre- and post-testings. And part of that, we keep track. I'm wanting to see who's eating, who's not, what's happening. When they get those post results back, I not only just say, okay, well, here's your results, here's yours, that's fine. I then give a class average. Here's what the average increase was on our vertical jump and our broad jump. Here's our average decrease on our 10 and 20 and 40-yard times and pro agility. So they see where they're at with the average. So they know, well, if I'm hitting below average, I improved. So they're excited to see that until they see the average scores where they're below average. That's when we take a look at the other part of it, of how you're eating. How many times do we talk about how many times you should have eaten? And yes, they know better, but big deal. I also don't want to hear from them, well, why am I better? I was there. I should have gotten better. Well, yeah, you didn't eat. You haven't eaten the way you needed to. You're not getting the sleep you needed to. You were staying up playing video games. On the weekends, you were getting 12 hours of sleep. And then you'd be up in your video game, you're sitting for the next 8 hours playing games. That's you as an athlete that needs to step up and do better if you want to. If you're there just to get better, just have a good time and play and take advantage of it, that's awesome. But don't tell me that you want to be better and you don't show it by following through on those things. And I think that's where the athletes really have to step up and do that. But as a coach, that tool of testing is so critical for that. Just like with parents, they want to see what's going on. Here's the improvement chart. But look what happened. Here he did this. It was great. The weight, here's what his weight was. Here's what his waist did over that time of the conditioning. Nobody in our 8-week summer conditioning should ever increase their waist measurement, but some will. Or some don't lose anything on the waist. They just stayed the same. Well, and I've got other kids, the average was we've dropped an inch and a half on the waist during that time, and that's why we check it. So we check the weight and that. So they see their weight increased and their waist measurement decreased. That's great. Even if the waist measurement stays the same, because they were already lean, that's all right. and their body weight went up, they put on muscle. So we help them understand what that's about. But that's why that chart that we put out is so important afterwards, because you need that as a fallback also for a coach, for that parent that comes in and says, well, wait a minute, we just spent $300 for your summer camp over here, and then his waist went up. Well, here's the average of the group. Here's what happened. Here's how many times we talked to him about food, how many times he was actually prepared, how many times he had to sit on the sideline because he couldn't get through warm-ups. And we'll see the kids on Thursdays. How do they do? Great. After 4 days, they're awesome. Wednesdays and Thursdays are killing it. They're working. They're in that routine. Then they're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, they're dragging. It's not because they got out of shape, because they were off for 3 days. They're off for 3 days. They didn't move. They didn't eat well. They had soda over the weekend, didn't sleep, and they're burnt. And then other kids are kicking it Monday through Thursday, and they're doing a great job out there. And that's why it's important to do that, is not to call out the guy that's down there laying down on his back, but we do it and say, okay, how many of you guys got your meals? And who didn't? Well, Johnny down there on the floor has got his hand up because he didn't get his meal, but then he starts figuring it out. So find different ways of getting it done. It doesn't mean you always take them out. Well, Bob said, run them until they throw up. No, he didn't say that. There's times I want to do that because you just, it's like, come on, guys, we've been through this. We know, but we don't do that. But we figure ways to do it. And if they can't get the lessons by talking to them, they can't get lessons through the workouts, then we're worried about their health. Man, bring the parents in. Hey, mom and dad, here's what's going on. Here's what we're trying. Here's what's going on. I'm sending these fuel charts home. He's not doing them, or he's not getting this in. I need your help. Our goal is to get them better, but keep them healthier and learning good habits. We don't want these kids getting into crazy diet stuff going on that I did as a wrestler, where we drop, all the weight, we make weigh-ins, and then Monday after our tournament, we get back in and I'm 10 pounds up, and I've got to drop 10 pounds again the next 4 to 5 days. That happened a lot. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. So training and paying attention, that's important. But as coach, you got the level of first talk to them, filling out charts, filling that part that they need to do so they understand it, make them accountable with maybe some tougher workouts by just simply shortening rest time to see how they respond so they feel that. And if not, bring in the parents so you talk to them. Get that early. The parents will want to know that. And they'll appreciate you're taking the time to say, hey, let's get on this together. What can we do to help? Or what else is going on at home? Maybe there's something else happening. But we also teach our kids it's not excuses. It's nobody else's fault. Even if you've got tough stuff at home, we're always here and we're helping with those things going on. We've had kids that, just don't have the money to do things. And I'm bringing, bread and peanut butter so the kids can make a quick sandwich before they go out and do it. It's okay. We'll tell the kids, tell us. We don't advertise out there, hey, who doesn't have money for food? Come on over here. We just see what's going on and we find out. But you've got, as a coach, can't also then just blame it on the kids for not eating and doing what they need to. Find out why. Get them a part of it. The kids will appreciate it, and they'll want to do more for you as well, which will help them in the long run too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Especially as a coach, to find not just complain about it, but find a solution to it.
Yeah.
There's always something you can do. You just got to kind of look through a different lens and kind of figure it out, kind of like we spoke earlier. And I think that's great. And kids they're not going to learn until they go through something tough, and then they don't want to experience that again. So that's when they're going to start clicking a little bit, because nobody wants to go through a workout and possibly throw up or just feel like terrible and come back the next day and then have to repeat that. That people just don't want to do that.
Unless you're a wrestler, maybe. They're a little warped.
Yeah, you're a little weird then. But most of the average kids we get at camps, they're not going to want to repeat that the second day. So they're going to start trying to do little bits more and start put the pieces together and those things going forth, and once those kids start to see that they're feeling better, then it's, you're starting to shift their mindset. You're starting to get them thinking, man, it feels good to get through this workout and not feel exhausted, or, hey, I'm starting to eat a little bit more now. I know I haven't been great at that. I'm getting a lot more protein. Now I'm starting to see some little muscles pop out, and that's when the big things change and the confidence comes about in a lot of these kids. So,
and that's why I think part two, as you're talking about that, I think as a coach, it's so important when we lead up into our camps, or whether it's the upcoming season, you're a coach and it's upset, send out ahead of time to them and say, look, here's what's coming up. Here's what you need to expect. Here's what I expect of you. Here's a fuel chart. Here's also our recommendations on what you should be eating and all. So the parents are getting the email. Obviously, they share it with the kids to get them on there. So we have very few kids on day one that have a problem. Even when I've got 110 degrees out there on day one, these kids already know, they've shown up, they've got the fuel chart filled out. Most of them are pretty good. They may not be great with it, but they understand, well, it's got 5 spaces for meals. I need to have something in each of those meals. Then we start fixing it. Then they learn a lot in that first week. And of course, we don't go,
nuts on that first.
There you go. Nuts are better than balls out. That's good. So we did set up. But on day one, it's always a built-in process because it's a 7-week camp. So we understand what we're doing and why. You've got to progress. We've got to get the basics in. We're not trying to kill them out there. So that allows for that time for those kids that think we're there or weren't, and then they can build into it, but it's still not easy. We're working on mechanics and body movement and how to work out, what you're doing, the weights, all that is part of it. But if you as a coach take that extra step to send that ahead of time, one, the parents are going to be help on board with you right away because you're doing something beyond just, hey, show up on this day and then we're going to go from there. You want these kids to get better, so help prepare them so they know what's expected. And those that are a little slow learners, that's where you got to do the other things to help with that 2x4 to help them understand what that is. So find that as a coach and do it. But I don't take examples where coaches or kids or anybody give me excuses for it. You have to do something about it. Somebody can tell me they've got a knee pain. That doesn't mean they're complaining. They're trying to help me understand what's happening so I can help them, and we figure a way to come up with a solution together to get better. That's what we want. It's never complaining. My complaining is somebody complains, they don't do anything about it. I don't have much time or patience for that. I never have. We have to figure out a way to make it better. So that's for my parents that I've worked with in the past. And some of you are shaking your head. Yeah, you've heard that conversation with me before as a parent or a coach or as an athlete. And that's okay because they're better for it. And that's what we want to do. We want you guys to be better. Otherwise, why put all that time and effort into it?
Yeah, that's great. I think at the end of the day, as long as coaches are thinking about, kind of like he spoke about, 7-8 week camp, building out a progression, and that's not saying that we're not going to be working hard. Working hard is going to be relative, so hard work is going to be going on through the 7 weeks, but week 1 is going to look different than week 7 as far as volume or intensity and this and that, but week 1's still tough. Yeah. Because they're going to get acquainted to everything that we're doing, and we're just going to be stacking on brick by brick a little bit each week. So coaches, just make sure you got your progression or regression and whatnot going through, have your coach's eyes up and keep watching and talking with the kids and seeing how they're all doing. If you do that, it's pretty tough to overtrain. I don't think any coaches want to hurt anybody. They just want to get everybody better. So if you keep that mindset in mind, and then the athletes keep the mindset that, I got to make sure I'm taking care of my stuff. I talk to my kids and I learned in wrestling and different things in the past that in my mind, if I didn't eat well, I didn't sleep very well, or I didn't hydrate, that, boo-hoo for me, it's going to be a tough day, and that's not your fault. That's my fault. So now I got to figure out how to get through it. So that's something I tell my kids here and there. And, it's like, well, I didn't have something for lunch. We'll say, hey, that's not my problem. That's your problem, right? Yeah. Okay. So now you're going to have to figure out how to get through today and get better with setting yourself in that circumstance. Okay, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's a good talk for them, and they got to realize that it's not always a perfect day. It's not no day's a perfect day. You can try to do all the great things. Some days you skip a beat, but guess what? You still got to put that work in. You still got to focus on getting better for the day. So.
Yeah, just getting the tools, understanding what the tools are, and the coach, it's your job to make sure those kids understand what they need to do to get ready. So that ultimately goes back to you, and then figuring out how you're going to get them there. That's where you have to help them with it.
Building that buy-in.
But yeah, so help them with that process and getting through it. If we can help you with it, or hey, what are the fuel charts? We got the link below. We'll have our guidelines down there below. You can use that as well. And get yourself out to some of these clinics too. I mean, we've got, and I did check over with the gal with Athletes Acceleration. I got an email back from her yesterday, and they still do have a few spots left at the Speed Summit. They're going to Speed and Power Summit they're doing in Laverne, California. It's a weekend of the 23rd of March. Yeah. So I'll have that linked as well. So as soon as you get it, I'll post this up this weekend, which is a weekend of March 3rd. So I'll get this up on the site so you guys have this as well. I can get to it. But, take advantage of these things when you've got, experts from around the country coming out and doing these. Like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. Bobby, since he was the little guy, has been doing this and learning. But we know as a coach, those that don't want to listen or think they know it all, way behind. Things have changed a lot in 30 years that I've done it. We still have the base premise that I started Strength of America with. It's about injury prevention and mechanics and looking where they're at. But I've learned a lot through the years, and we keep progressing. And where Bobby's at and stuff too are way ahead of where I was at 25 years old too. So, which was half my lifetime ago. Okay, a little more than half my lifetime ago. But, ultimately just understand that you've got to help. You got to give back and keep doing that. But ask questions. Don't let another season go by before you ask. Right now you see it. What is it? Messages, comment below on the stuff, on our Facebook, wherever you're seeing this, or you can just email us. Some people don't like to post things out for everybody else. They think if they're asking, that means they don't know, which none of us do. We want to keep asking and finding out. So it's okay, because you're not the only one with this question. So, but yeah, keep doing that. But understand, I just don't like when everybody's blaming coaches for this overtraining and things happening. Sometimes, yeah, there's some dumb things. We hear about it, and in Arizona, we hear about it every year. And unfortunately, we see kids that die in this heat and stuff happening. But rarely is it just because of the conditioning. There's something else that's gone on with that. And that's why these physicals, well, if you've got any heart stuff in your family or things going, expect more than the simple turn your head and cough physical. Get these kids figured out, a little better tests on their physicals as well. But boy, you got to fuel. If you're going to be out in this heat, you have to fuel. You've got to eat. You've got to drink. And you got a morning camp. I don't care in the morning. Well, you're going to go out and go because you don't like to eat first. That's dumb. You've got to get some fuel in your tank so you can do something. Doesn't have to be a lot. You can have the bigger breakfast when you get done, but you need something to get it done. So if all else fails, just remember. Of course I'm right.
All right, on that note.
Bob is learning. You guys, just appreciate you guys following. Keep up. Make sure you like, subscribe. Share it with another parent, coach, something you've heard talking about overtraining things going on. Because we want these kids safe. And the only way to do that is to make sure you're following the basics and you're eating, hydrating, and just being prepared, ready to go. All right?
All right.
Got them? All right, guys. Appreciate you following us. And look for some more videos coming up. Instagram. I appreciate you guys going up. Numbers are going up on there, which is fun. I'm starting to learn a little bit more on the camera stuff, so we're slowly getting there. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.